Thank you, Benji. So the title of my research is Protecting Local Community Water User Rights over Alwero Dam, holding government water licensing authorities accountable. So I'm basically going to share some of the insights that I gathered during my field visit. So it's not something which is final, it's work in progress. So basically, I'm going to have some introduction, which will be followed by a description of the research area. And then I'll talk a bit about water use of the community members from the Alwero Dam, which will be followed by the water licensing process of Saudi Star on Alwero Dam. Then I'll talk about communities' involvement in water licensing of Saudi Star on Alwero Dam, and wrap up with some concluding remarks. So to start with the introduction, my research is on Alwero Dam, which is located in the Gambela National Regional State. It was constructed in the 1980s, so about 3 decades ago, but it has never been utilized for the purpose it was constructed for. It was basically constructed to cultivate for irrigation of about 10,000 hectares of land, but it was never used because of regime change, and the canal work was not complete. So it was never utilized until it was leased out. It was the water permit was given to Saudi Star PLC in 2009, and this was within the context of land acquisition, large scale land acquisition that was happening in many parts of Africa at that time. So Saudi Star also received around 10,000 hectares of land to basically utilize the dam for irrigation. So I wanted to research on this particular area because there are research, but the research are mainly on the land and within the context of land grabbing. And there are a few which are altered on water, but some aspects of water governance, but not so much about the accountability, particularly the process through which the dam was or the right to make use of the water from the dam given to Saudi Star was not really looked into. So the first time I looked at this particular case was when I was conducting research for my dissertation. And I was informed that in 2013-14, the responsibility of managing this dam, the Alwero Dam, was transferred to the Waterworks Construction Enterprise, and that was from the Ministry of Water and Energy, which at the time was also responsible in handling irrigation. And when I went to the Waterworks Construction Enterprise, the responsibility was not really being handled because the structure to manage the dam was just not there. And that was in 2017, even if the responsibility was transferred to them in 2013. So I observed sort of the gap that was happening this time. So that's why I also decided to further investigate this issue of accountability regarding how the water license was given to Saudi Star. So to look at some of the research questions, it basically looks into the accountability issues that are raised by the community members that are making use of the dam since it has been constructed 3 decades ago. And it also intends to look into how the community may be able to better organize to ensure their water rights vis-a-vis other, investments, including Saudi Star. And the other question, research question that I have is the process, exploring the process through which Saudi Star was granted the water permit on the Alwero Dam, and to also point out what can be improved, particularly looking at Saudi Star's investment, if there is anything which can be improved even after the investment has started currently, and what the government can learn, or what communities elsewhere can learn from the experience of Saudi Star. And then another question is the institutional arrangements that are there to ensure transparency, answerability, and enforceability in addressing economic, social, and environmental risks that are involved in allocating water for investment and community use, generally in Ethiopia, and particularly on the Alwero Dam. And the last question is, what should be done in order to address the concerns on the ground? And also how the findings from this research can serve as an input for policy making in Ethiopia. So these are basically the research questions that I have and that I intend to answer at the end of completing the research. So going to the research area, as I was saying earlier, Alwero Dam is located on Alwero River, and Alwero River is one of the tributaries to the Baro-Akobo Sobat basin, sub-basin, which is again sub-basin to the Nile. So basically, looking at stakeholders, we have local inhabitants, we have the government of Ethiopia, and also regional actors that are basically basin countries of the Nile. But this particular study does not really look into the other aspects, but it specifically focuses on the community. And the dam is situated in the Gambela National Regional State, which is one of the regional states in Ethiopia, and it shares border, an international border with South Sudan, and it also shares a boundary with two other Ethiopian regions, Oromia to the north and east, and the southern nations, nationalities, and peoples regional state to the south. So the Gambela National Regional State is endowed with natural resources, and a major resource to talk about is the tributaries of the Baro-Akobo Sobat River. These are Gilo, Alwero, Baro, and Akobo. So basically, the government also has identified the Gambela National Regional State as one of the regions in Ethiopia which is suitable for agricultural investment, mainly because of the existence of these rivers and also because of the topography of the area. So there is actually a study which is conducted on the Baro-Akobo Sobat River Basin, which has identified a potential to irrigate 480,000 hectares of land only in the Gambela National Regional State. So basically to say that there is a lot of interest from the government to make use of this area for irrigation. And one of the mechanisms through which this can happen is by making use of that dam, the Alwero Dam, which is the only one constructed so far, even if there are other plans. So the dam was constructed towards the end of the military regime, as I said, 3 decades ago, but it was never utilized until it was basically it was contracted. The 10,000 hectares of land was contracted out leased out to Saudi Star, and that was in 2009. So up until then, no investment, large-scale investment was happening. It was happening in the region, but not really utilizing the Alwero Dam. So in 2009, Saudi Star was provided with 10,000 hectares of land and use it for irrigation once it completes the canal work. So it was also responsible to complete the canal work and other infrastructural work. So between 2009 and 2015, Saudi Star was working on the infrastructure, and production only started afterwards. So the production went on for about 2 years, starting to 2015 and 2016, but it halted again in 2016 when the owner of the PLC was imprisoned. Sheikh Mohammed Ali Al-Amoudi was imprisoned in Saudi Arabia for about, and then it just halted because the management was not really committed to actually proceed with the investment. So now it's at a re-engineering phase, and this phase has really caught the attention of the government as well, because recently I was informed that the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy, along with the Minister of Irrigation and Lowlands, Engineer Aisha, visited the area, and they agreed the re-engineering process will be happening. Now, proceeding with the community use from the Alwero Dam, community highly relies on the water that comes from the land, because their livelihood in a sense entirely depends on the water from the dam. So the dam is mainly used for fishing. So basically for consumption, and also for commercial purposes. So it's also a way of generating income to the community. So the fish that one eats in Gambela town mainly comes from this dam. In addition, community members practice recession agriculture in the area. So this basically happens during the dry season, because during the wet season, you cannot do that near the dam. Basically, is flooded. So when the water returns to the dam area during the dry season, they use it for recession agriculture, and they produce vegetable and they produce different crops in the area. And it's also a source of water for cleaning, as well as construction of houses in the area. But for drinking, they have tap water, so they don't use it anymore. But before that, they had tap water. They informed me, the community members informed me, that they used to drink from the dam, but that's not happening anymore. Looking at the water licensing process of Saudi Star on Alwero Dam, there are different claims, and this is an area where there are a lot of gray areas, and nobody seems to know what exactly happened, or none of the informants wanted to really tell me what happened. So the Ministry of Water and Energy says that there is a water permit, which was granted to Saudi Star at the beginning, but the problem is they are not renewing it. It's supposed to be renewed every year, and they're not renewing it. The other claim from Saudi Star is that there is no water permit. Rather, what they have is the lease agreement, and the lease agreement says they have, they can use the land for irrigation. So for them, water coming from the dam, they have access to it, but free of charge. In a sense, they have paid for it because it's an irrigable land, and irrigable land is a bit more expensive than rain-fed land. So they understand in that manner. So this is one of the area where we see a lot of lack of clarity, because there are different claims from both from the government side and also from Saudi Star. But generally, the process of granting license to Saudi Star lacks transparency. It lacks transparency because not only the community, but also government officials in the Gambela National Regional State don't really know how it happened, how the license was given to Saudi Star. So there is lack of transparency. They just informed me that it was granted by the federal government. So lack of transparency is one of the things that I observed. Another issue is the tendency to avoid accountability. And this is reinforced by frequent restructuring that's happening, that has been happening in the past, and also it just happened in 2021. So the management of this dam was transferred 3 times from one government organ to another. So it was initially the Ministry of Water and Energy, also included irrigation. And then it went to the Waterworks Construction Enterprise. And now it's again transferring to a new Ministry of Irrigation and Lowlands. So in all of these, we really miss track of what really happened at the beginning. So, and this creates a space to avoid accountability. So looking at community's involvement in the water licensing process, as I was also indicating earlier, community involvement in the licensing process is none. So it's not really there, because the community members found out about the project when posters were, they were installing posters, and they started talking about it. They started recruiting employees for their farm. So they really didn't, there was no process, as far as my interviewees informed me. There was no prior consultation process that happened. And some community members mentioned that some government officials came, but they came afterwards to basically convince them that this project is beneficial to them and they should accept it, kind of thing, so that they don't create problems, they don't resist, kind of. So that kind of discussion only. And they say all the promises, the community members argue that all the promises that was made to them at the beginning did not really happen, because they were promised schools, they were promised machineries, they were promised, employment opportunities that would really change their economic conditions. But they say this did not really happen. And, all in all, they're disappointed in the investment. But when asked why don't they communicate these issues to government organs, they say it will just be a waste of our time, because so according to the informants, they've tried to communicate their concerns in the past, but there is no response, right? So there is no, since the government organs that they report to are not responsive, they are really reluctant to do anything about it, particularly from aspect of reporting their concerns. So another issue of getting organized, because they would have stronger kind of voice when if they're able to get organized, and for them it's not really an option because they feel that even if they get organized, much will not change. And another issue that I sensed is sort of particularly from the government officials, resistance of people getting organized, because any type of organization around this issue is perceived as coming from political opposition. And this may actually be targeted so that it doesn't really create political resistance. So in that sense, and civil society organizations in the area, there are a few from my observation, and they mainly focus on building structures, or they focus on economic empowerment because they organize, they use for fishing, and basically to train them and to provide them with fishing equipments. So not so much on accountability. And that's partly because it was really a political issue to really even to conduct research on this area. But now it's not so much, there's not a lot of resistance to conduct research in the area because these are the wrongdoings of the past government. But civil society organizations are not really there to do these issues with accountability. So some concluding remarks. The license was provided by the federal government, but the process is not really transparent because it's very difficult to uncover what really happened there. And people tend to change, even at the regional, at the Warada district level. There is a lot of turnover, and you don't really find people who were there when the license was granted. But those that were there, they said they did not involve, even the people in government did not involve, let alone. But the communities, of course, they say they didn't involve. And I tried to talk to different categories to see, because they use they may not really know, because they were just kids when the license was provided. And I also talked to the elderly, and they said there was no such consultation. And any type of organization outside the government was not really involved during the provision of the licensing. And that's the information that comes from community members and other key informants that I try to communicate with. And the community members, as I said, are really reluctant to make any kind of requests individually or organized because of lack of responsiveness. There is no response, and they feel like it's just a waste of time to get organized to make requests. So this is basically my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Firehiwot.